What guns should you have in your collection to survive a societal collapse, civil war, invasion, or whatever? That's what we're going to talk about in this video. And I'm going to base this list off of guns that are available in my area. I do know that depending on where you live, you may not have the same access to firearms that people in more free places do. And also, you're going to be influenced by literally your environment, whether you live in a rural area, whether you live in a city, urban area. So that does play into the list. Now, for personal defense, one of the types of firearms that, in my opinion, is the best, obviously, is going to be a 9 millimeter pistol. For me, that choice is going to be a Glock. And the reason for that is simply because of availability of parts, the availability in many cases to be able to access additional firearms from the same manufacturer. If you have a unique firearm, that there are just few of, or there's not a lot of part support of, that gun is only going to get you until it breaks down, and then you're done with it. If you have something like a Glock, there's a good possibility that you can repair it fairly easily. Now, the Glock 19 is probably one of the most known. Glock 45, basically any of the 9 millimeter Glocks, particularly the Glock 19, Glock 17, and that area, that genre of handguns. Again, that is my personal preference. And another one that goes along with that is the 1911. And I would go with a good quality 1911, and there's a couple of reasons why the 1911 is on this list. Number one, if you have a Glock, then you have 9 millimeter covered. If you have a 1911, particularly for me, it would be one chambered in 45 ACP. And that is why, because you want to be able to have access to ammunition. If the whatever event lasts long enough, and if you don't have access to 9 millimeter, you may have access to 45 ACP. And then you will need something that you can shoot it with. A caveat to that is having a Glock 20, Glock 21, a 45 ACP Glock, and that is also an option as well. But the reason that I say a 1911 is, again, because of the availability of parts. You could get that gun back up and running with the parts that you would be able to find in most places. There's something that you're going to be able to get in most of your gun stores or in a lot of other places. You could literally, depending on what's happening, what's going on in your area, you could find another 45. There again, they're very common as far as the 1911 from different manufacturers. Man, you could get your gun back up and running. So those are the two handguns that I think would be at the top of my list, and that's a 1911 and a Glock 19. Not to knock any of the others. Again, that's my personal preference. Now, beyond that, we need to move into something more akin to what people think, and that is a rifle. And I would recommend two. The first, obviously, is going to be an AR-15 chambered in 5.56. That is, without a doubt, a must-have in any collection, especially here in the United States. The AR-15 is America's rifle. There are millions of them out there in this country alone. Some of the estimates out there as far as the total numbers, it's impossible to know. I mean, it is just impossible to know how many of the AR-15 are out there in common use. And that gun is one, again, that can be repaired easily if you come across a parts cache, depending on what's happening, guys. And there again, this is all just hypothetical stuff that we hope never happens, but could potentially happen. And you would be able to repair your gun. You could get parts for it, as well as the 5.56 ammo is readily available for most folks, and have plenty of it. Buy it cheap, stack it deep. The best time to buy it is today. The next best time is tomorrow, okay, if you don't already have it. The better time was yesterday, because prices are always going up on ammo. And the second rifle that I would add to that list is an AK-47 chambered in the 7.62 by 39. The reason, again, for that is simple ammo availability, not to mention that the AK platform is designed for a specific purpose, and it does that purpose well. It is not designed for long range shooting. It is designed for closer in shooting. It is, 300 to 500 yards, and that's stretching it probably. But the fact is, an AK has a good reputation for reliability. And if you have a combination of an AR-15 and an AK-47, you have a good solid foundation for your home defense, for personal defense, or whatever. And again, I'm basing this on you having these somewhere like in a bug out location or something like that, because obviously you're not going to be able to carry this many guns if you're trying to move from one place to another. So that's just a little bit of a caveat that I wanted to throw in there. And beyond that, I would also add a good bolt action rifle. In fact, I would argue that you would use a bolt action rifle more than you would the AR-15 or the AK-47. Granted, you can hunt with an AR-15 or an AK-47. You can bring down deer with an AR-15. Not necessarily the best cartridge for it, in my opinion, but it would work. Same with an AK-47, but again, that bolt-action rifle is one that is going to give you a lot longer range. Chambered in 308 would be my preference. Again, that is what I would go with. I would also stay within the NATO rounds for virtually every gun on this list, but having a good bolt action rifle, some of them that are my favorite. I have an older Remington 700 back when they were a little better in quality, if you know what I mean, as well as some of the new Rugers. The Ruger American is a great option, in my opinion, as well as Tikka. Again, you would need to base that on your particular budget as far as which one you have. I've got videos on these rifles on my channel, so go over and check them out. But a bolt action rifle, particularly one chambered in 308, you're going to be able to do a lot with it as far as hunting. You're going to bring down any kind of game that you want, anything pretty much in North America, and be able to protect yourself at longer ranges. And another rifle that I would add to that list is just a good 22. The Ruger 1022 probably would be at the top of that list. There are some other models out there available. There's even Henry lever actions and things like that. But if you wanted a semi-automatic, again, you've got the Ruger, you have others. Lever action is Henry, there's Rossi, there's just several different ones out there that make a good rifle, and they're perfect for small game hunting and things like that. And again, 22 ammo is very affordable. You can buy that stuff cheap and just have just boxes of it sitting around, and again, be able to feed yourself, and yes, in many cases, defend yourself if necessary. Although I don't think it's necessarily the best cartridge, it could work. But beyond that, guys, what you need to remember in any kind of these situations, and we all like to talk about it, we like to imagine what we would do if we found ourselves in a situation like this. Again, the main thing that you're going to want to be able to do is you're going to want to be able to provide yourself with food. If you are in any kind of situation like that, if there is a civil war or civil unrest, if it's bad enough, the first thing that's going to happen is a depletion of resources, and you will need to eat every day. You might not be in a gunfight every day, hopefully not, because that's a bad way to live, and people that are in one every day typically don't live very long in many cases. But you do have to eat every day, or at least every few days, and especially water. You got to have access to water, things like that. So, we like to talk about all the hypotheticals. We like to, talk about what could happen, but the main thing is you need to be able to feed yourself, and that's where a hunting rifle would be very handy. That would be one that's an absolute must, and especially for rural areas, deer hunters and things like that. Now, when you get into the urban areas, you're probably not going to be doing much hunting, and that's where you need more, I should say, thoughts for self-defense, protection, personal protection, and things like that. So again, that's why you have to tailor your list, your preferences to where you live, to what is available to you. And let me know some of your thoughts and some of your ideas down in the comments below. What guns would you have on your list? Do you live in an urban area? Do you live in a rural area? What would some of those be? I'd like to know your thoughts down in the comments below. Anyways, guys, hope you liked the video. Check out Blackout Coffee. Use my code and save yourself a few bucks off of your order. Use code Boomstick and use my link, and that way you can get some great coffee, help support a company that supports the 2A. Check out all the links down below. Thanks for watching. Again, leave me a comment. Let me hear from you. And guys, we'll see you next time.